And you're live.
Good morning, everyone, and aloha snack bar to all of you out there. It's another exciting day on Rogue Money with the mornings with V and CJ, where we break down the news, the information, the reality of everything you need to get done and knowing for the entire week and the entire day. With that being said, you can check us out on roguemoney.net. Follow us on Twitter at the Rogue Money, as well as the Rogue Money Facebook. Also, guys, if you haven't done so already, you need some help with your credit. Check out my guys over at myfreedomnow.us, myfreedomnow.us, where they can help you get a better credit score. With that being said, guys, CJ, I think what's going on with you, bro?
Doing well, man. Doing well. A lot of great articles over the last couple of days at
Yeah.
roguemoney.net. Bankster Slayer threw one up there yesterday. Ken Shortman Jr.'s got one there, as well as James. So check it out. Yeah, some great stuff there.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is. Where do you want to begin, my man? I think we can start off with some MAGA action. There's some talks about a wall going up. Is that what I hear?
There is definitely a wall going up. A wall is going up. Yeah. So yesterday, obviously he imposed the as far as the folks coming over, blocked I think 6 countries yesterday, where we went ahead and said, hey, look, we're not going to be issuing visas at this time. But then also this discussion around the wall. So Trump signs executive orders enabling construction of the proposed border wall, and then also targeting sanctuary cities, which are just ridiculous. They're draining federal monies for that. So and that's expected today. So President Trump plans to sign executive orders Wednesday enabling construction of the proposed wall on the U.S.-Mexico border and targeting cities where local leaders refuse to hand over illegal immigrants for deportation, according to the White House officials familiar with this decision. So again, this is something, again, that Trump is delivering on his promise that he ran on, was to secure our borders, which we know V has contributed towards, not only crime, but the drugs that come across, the human trafficking. The drug cartels, pretty much sometimes put a gun to people's head to say, hey, we need you to do this. So, this is a good thing.
Absolutely, it's a great thing, man. I mean, there's no place in the world where a country without borders does not exist. Borders are vital. I mean, we've hear Michael Savage talking about it all the time. Borders, language, culture. He's absolutely correct. I mean, what place in the world? I mean, you go anywhere in the world, typically a border of a nation is heavily guarded. There's a wall, some sort of a barrier there. There's usually armed individuals on the other side of it, and it's being watched 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You come to where we are, and it's a free for all. In the southern border and the northern border, it's an absolute free for all. So this just doesn't work because we cannot keep track of certain nefarious individuals that can be coming through, and we can't even those who are not nefarious. Like what? It's very difficult. Okay, again, it's very difficult. It's like what I've said this a long time ago. It's not the creme de la creme that's sneaking across the border. It's not the scientists and engineers looking for a better job. This ain't Operation Paperclip or something like that, where you're trying to bring in scientists. No, this is those that are in the worst disenfranchised situations within their own respective countries, and they are trying to sneak across into our land. And they're already, I mean, think about it. If you've been disenfranchised and you're in an incredibly bad position in the country that you're in, and you're coming across the border and you're trying to get a quote unquote better life for yourself in the US, it's going to be very difficult for you to sustain any sort of quality of life. So you would have to get some sort of assistance. And that's the drain on our system that we simply cannot afford anymore. It's a lot of wasteful spending. I mean, my God, I mean, how much, I was having this talk with a family member. Um, how will we pay for the wall? Well, just, it's interesting because I saw an article put out by the Mises Institute. And they're talking about the U.S. Navy being a bastion of waste and corruption. I mean, look how they got this brand new warship, CJ, that barely works half the time and has no gun. There's money for the wall. What about the the F-35? I mean, trillions of dollars poured into a project to make a half-baked plane that can barely fly. It's gone. I don't think even still thinks that it doesn't even work because they're waiting for a soft grade upgrade for that one. There's the money for it. So there's all sorts of money that can be made because we have so much pork barrel spending. All you got to do is just trim the fat. It's not a question of where we'll get the money. The money's there. It's what ridiculous harebrained program are we going to get rid of? It's that simple. And then we could have a wall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, eventually, it'll pay for itself. Do yourself this. Try to drive across the U.S. Mexico border into Mexico in a vehicle and see what happens. Try doing it. The amount of inspections that they do there, they make you exit your vehicle, look inside your vehicle. So it's like a one-way street, right? It's like one of those, yeah, inflow all you want, outflow, it's locked up. And in the long run, whether it's paid up front or on the back end, I truly believe that with the reduction, exactly what you said, the overwhelming amount of social services sometimes it's required for this, and then you take a look at the amount of crime that sometimes is committed by these, and then again they're protected. They move to a sanctuary city. These sanctuary cities are obviously receiving federal funds, so eventually it'll pay for itself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sorry about that, man. Take a swig of the coffee.
No worries.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It will pay for itself. Plus the fact we have a massive deficit with Mexico. And what's funny is that the Mexican officials will be meeting with Trump today and tomorrow, okay? And they'll be discussing the renegotiation of NAFTA. Now, they've threatened and says, if Trump crosses red lines, we'll walk out of the meeting. We'll abandon NAFTA altogether. Yeah, goodbye. Goodbye. Please, if you want to abandon NAFTA altogether, go for it. Because you guys are the only ones that are benefiting from any sort of trade agreement that we have. I mean, think about it this way: they have access to a multi-trillion-dollar economy. An economy that is, let's say, an 11 trillion. I don't think we have a 16 trillion, but an 11 trillion is really stretching at this point. But anyway, it's a multi-trillion-dollar economy. What do we have access to? An economy that's a fraction of the size. So who's the beneficiary here? It's clearly Mexico. If they want to jump out of NAFTA, please do, by all means. It's one less thing we got to deal with.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Which brings us to the next thing, my man. The pipeline.
The pipeline. So, again, Trump delivering on his promises, and I know many are going to be like, well, the environment and all that, and I completely understand that. I think that you have to take a look at the actions that Trump takes and then benchmark that against, no administration, no person is going to be able to do everything that 100% aligns around your principles and your beliefs. But what we do know is this: we do know that other countries, China, Russia, are ramping up their energy sectors and preparing for. So as an American, do I want to pay $5 or $6 a gallon at the pump? If we look at the amount of harm that was created with the gas prices that were lowering in terms of U.S. refineries and what's going on, this deal was negotiated under Obama and passed under Obama, and then he reneged on it just out of matter of being politically correct.
Absolutely. I think, they deliberated on it for 7 years, and then they just canceled it because they cited environmental reasons, because some dung beetle somewhere might have their habitat affected or something like that. I mean, it's along those lines of ridiculousness. Now, here's the funny thing, okay? They've taken 7 years to deliberate on it. Then the final year, they axed it. And who, pray tell, was the main person, okay, with that? It was Warren Buffett, if I'm not mistaken, CJ, wasn't that?
I'll have to go back and research. And I think at the time, with the amount of protests that were occurring because of the Indian reservation there, and there's a lot of there's a lot of speculation regarding that. They're saying that it's going to go under this natural lake or this natural waterway, so that's one of the largest concerns. But I've heard a lot of conflicting information whether this lake is even on tribal lands, and I need to do some better research to understand it. But when you look at the amount of money that that's projected off of this deal, you're talking about a huge influx to the economy that's hurting right now. So again, if this is a project, and I think what happened was that Trump told the Army Civil Corps of Engineers that, hey, do me a favor, let's review this one more time, let's study it, let's come to an agreement somewhere of how we can make this work. I can't imagine that there's just one slice of a pie that they can't try to determine of, kind of like the art of the deal, right? Let's negotiate something to make this work.
Yeah.
But this was an agreement that was already set up with Canada and the company that's associated with there in Canada to build this pipeline. I believe it's like 75% completed, V. Like, this is the last section of it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's got to go through the Standing Rock over there, and everybody's coming out and protesting and talking about how bad it is, and again they're bringing up that whole water supply issue. But the thing is this is not the old school pipes that people are thinking about. This is the new stuff. These pipes are newer, they're better, they're constantly checked for leaks. They're more leak proof than anything else. What can possibly happen? I mean, okay, fine. You're worried about your lake. I think people can, cut the pipeline around these Indian reservations. This is fine. Leave the Indian reservations alone. They don't want the pipes. They don't want to, be involved with it. Fine. Then, cut around the Indian reservations. I've seen how the left tried to really undermine that. It was to the point where the protesters were threatening the workers who were working on it, and then the workers had to, call in dogs, people with dogs, and to protect them. And people were like, well, look, the corporations have called in these attack dogs to attack us, this, that, and the other. And that's just simply not true. They were brought in there because there is video of these protesters attacking the workers. The workers are trying to get a job done, collect a paycheck, go home to their families. If that's an issue, if that's such a big deal, fine. Let's go around these reservations, if it is possible, or cut it through another section of Dakota or another state. There's always a solution. There's always more than one way to skin a cat, CJ. So I don't think this is that big deal of a holdup. And again, the environmental impact, I don't think is going to be as huge as possible because, they're utilizing newer technology. The newer pipes that are used are leak proof, man. They're very, very high tech. They don't require that much servicing, and they're monitored. They have actual monitors on there that detects the leaks, and they have like bypass valves so that if a leak is detected, they go into automatic shutdown, and they shut it down and close off any sort of backflow so the oil doesn't dissipate into the larger swaths of the area. So there's a lot of safety mechanisms that we're utilizing with newer technologies that we didn't have before. So my whole thing is, okay, it's the environmental risk of anything happening is next to nothing. It's a very small minutia. Like if there is a leak or a burst pipe or whatnot, you could only see a little bit of oil that will dissipate out into the environment. But that's already that in and of itself, the environment can clean itself up in that regard. Okay, oil is an organic substance, and it will be eventually dissipated and recycled within the system itself. But okay, I mean, you got to remember, oil is organic. It's not something that's like a radioactive isotope that's going to sit there for 10,000 years. No, it actually the world environmental system, the on this planet, has a way of breaking petroleum-based products down. Okay, so if a little bit leaks out, it's really not a big deal. It can be contained. They can have teams out there to contain it and get it cleaned up rapidly and quickly. You're not going to have. You see, people are thinking about this, CJ. They're thinking about like a BP oil spill, bro. That's what they're thinking about.
Right.
They're thinking, oh, there's going to be Deepwater Horizon on this freshwater lake. No. It's sad, man, because this is a job opportunity even for those that are on that reservation, and they're just like, yeah, screw it. I would like to see some demographics of what this reservation is like, CJ. Like, what's really going on this reservation in terms of jobs, in terms of industry.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be an interesting factor. And if we dig back to the root cause of it, I blame this squarely on the shoulders of Barack Obama. He's the one with the poor leadership skills to be able to go in and to effectively negotiate a deal. He kicked this can down the road for at least 4 years through his administration. Well, eventually somebody has to make a decision. It's just one of those unfortunate parts that when you're in the position that you're in that leadership role, you have to make a decision. You just cannot, continue to leave something that's idle. So everything that's became of what is the decision, and yes, Trump either way is going to get, nailed for it. But Obama should have effectively, went and negotiated through this and worked a deal, but he had no skill set to do that, V.
Yep, absolutely, man, 1000%. He has no skill set simply because he's a community planner, and he's in there for other interests. So his interests are not America's interests; they're the interests of his donors. They're the interests of those who have their hand in his pocket. That's whose interest he's out there looking for, And,
right.
Another thing with the wall, with the regulations, bro. What's the other thing that Trump's looking to do?
Yeah, so Trump yesterday met with several auto executives and just pretty much told them that, listen, your industry in particular has been under so many different environmental regulations that are completely out of control. We're stopping it. I really seeing him disassembling the EPA.
Good.
And just pretty much telling the automobile executives, listen, I'm here to help. Let's take another look at America. Let's take another look at your factories here. There's no reason to move your plant to Mexico or to Canada. Let's take a look here. Yeah, so Trump met with the largest automobile executives Tuesday and expressed that he would curtail unnecessary environmental regulations and make it easier to build plants in the United States. This changes up what he expects will shore up the manufacturing jobs he repeatedly promised to voters on the campaign trail. So again, this comes after the fact that, he taunted the automobile executives several times on Twitter, calling them out, rightfully so, when they were, moving these jobs to Mexico, wherever, and then obviously bringing those vehicles back here. But, one of the industries I can think of as well as the automobile industry is let's take a look at energy. Let's take a look at how much our electricity prices and so forth have came up due to the amount that Obama was out there just smashing the coal industry, right?
Oh my God. Oh.
So, I know my electric bill used to run, $89-$100 somewhere in there. And then anymore through the summer and even through the winter, it's like 150. It's just like incredible the amount of prices that escalated. And who did that hit? That hit the average person, the average consumer, like, you and I. It didn't hit the top, 1%. No. So these regulations, they come in and they do these things. Yeah, they may look good on paper and everything else, but obviously it hinders the middle class and the working poor.
Yeah, 1000%, man. I mean, it's the middle class that's affected the most. It's the middle class who pays for it. I mean, again, people have this crazy idea in their head. They hear clean coal, and they think to themselves, "Oh my God, it's like this smoky, soot-filled power plant. It's polluting the environment." No, there's a bunch of filtration units within the smokestacks itself. That most of what you're coming out of the exhaust is very, very minute hydrocarbons and mostly just steam and water. Okay, that's what's coming out of the smokestacks. And with the newer technologies, you can even completely eliminate that. So these unfounded fears, okay, that in the background of those entire fears are basically globalist elitists who want to push their Agenda 21, who want to push that false narrative of climate. First it was global cooling, then it was global warming, now it's just climate change. Well, guess what, dingbat? The climate is always changing, you morons. I mean, at one point, these people, again, painting you the picture that the Earth once had a stable climate. The Earth was a dangerous son of a bitch, killing people left and right. I mean, 90% of species that ever existed on this planet, CJ, are now extinct.
Right.
They're extinct. Right. And how is that a stable climate? The Earth is nature itself, by its nature, is chaotic. She's crazy.
Unless you're going to start learning how to control the sun.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Unless you're going to figure out how to do it. Well, there's global warming, V. How do you explain that? Well, did you know the ice caps actually grew, you dumbass? Did you know that? No, but there's global warming, V. Do you know it's also warming on Mars? Is it because they have SUVs and coal-fired power plants over there? Is that what it is? Is that why Mars is also heating up a little bit? Could it be a 12,000-year sun cycle? Maybe that's it. I mean, I must reduce my carbon footprint. Your carbon footprint, basically a tax on life, basically the amount of life energy you put out. You want some bureaucrat or some kleptocrat on Wall Street or in Washington to regulate your life? I mean, think about the insanity. That's where we were going. And they push this false narrative, and then the liberals, who are all heart and no brain, will jump on it and say, "Oh my God, we got to save the environment. The polar bears, look at the polar bears. They can't swim." The friggin' polar bears can swim 300 miles with no problem. That's documented. And so then the elitists, using the simps that are these all heart and no brain liberals, will go ahead and begin the process of deindustrialization through regulation. Deindustrialization through regulation. And that's why, folks, that's why cars today are very expensive, and they're not as built well in terms of material. I'm not talking about the design. I mean, what the automotive engineers have done in terms of safety and reliability is monumental. It's absolutely incredible. It should be they should be applauded. But I'm talking about the material. I mean, there was a time where you would find certain materials in cars, like soft touch plastics. They don't do that no more. They do the hard plastic. Why? Because it's cheaper. There was a time where, in cars where interiors were, hand wrapped in vinyl. You don't find that no more, except on more higher end vehicles. There was a time where in cars, they would use hand stitched leather pretty much everywhere, and you only find that today on premium cars. So they're skimping. I mean, look, cars don't even have bumpers properly. An actual bumper, everything's all integrated. One piece modular. Why? Because it cost.
Right.
It's cost. Like it's remarkable. Like, I'll give you an example. I looked at a late '90s model Mercedes S-Class, and I'm looking at this thing. This is a time when Mercedes over-engineered everything. I mean, the company was run by engineers. They engineered first, and they talked about cost later. And I'm looking at this beast of a car, this mammoth car, man. S-Class. It was like an S, 500 or an S600, a big body Merc, right? And I'm looking at this late '90s one. This is the last of the big bodies, the last of the engineer-driven Mercedes-Benzes. And you down the windows. The windows were like 1.5 inches thick. Like, what? They don't even do stuff. It would cost them. I mean, back then in the '90s, this was like a car that was $120,000. You adjust that for inflation, it's almost $200,000. Maybe even more. And this is for like a base S500 or something like that. So they don't even do that anymore, because it would cost to make a car of that caliber today. It would be astronomically expensive. So they got to cut corners because of the EPA, because of this and that. And then they got these fuel efficiency mandates, CJ. Oh, yeah, every car has to be 55 miles per gallon by 2020. How the hell are you going to do that? And going all electric is not the answer. I mean, can you imagine? Like, you're in your Tesla, you're all of a sudden you decided to open it up a few times, really step on the gas pedal, and then your 300-mile range dipped to like 50 miles.
Oh,
and you got 50,
yeah.
Now you got range anxiety, and now you're looking around for a charging station. I mean, good luck. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we need to unshackle this and allow creativity to spring forth, man. So him getting rid of these regulations, it's great. I think it's wonderful. I think this is how you spur economic development, because these regulations are not benefiting us; it's benefiting these cronies, bro.
It is, and it falls directly into the narrative V that they tried painting yesterday with, look, Trump is telling the EPA not to publish any reports and go on social media. It's because half of those reports were so fabricated. They were so one-way slanted towards the EPA and the environmental. So factor this in, is that we've documented the fact that there's this whole carbon tax credit thing, and dated back in the Clinton era. What's the guy's name? The whole environmentalist, Al Gore, right? So they created this carbon tax thing that's sitting in Chicago, waiting for these energy companies to have to purchase these carbon tax credits, but are made up out of thin air. Thin air that they've made these things. They're waiting. Do you think the energy companies are just going to say, yeah, we're going to pay it and be done with it? No, they're going to pass that added cost onto the consumers. And why people do not understand that, I just do not get it.
Yeah. Yep, exactly, man. It's people don't put. Here's the problem. This is the difference between a conservative brain or a critical thinker's brain versus a brainless libtard. We look at government as a problem. We look at government as parasitic. We look at the fact that a government is a bureaucracy that creates nothing. They produce nothing, but they take everything. And we know it's a parasitic relationship. In order for a government to get that big, the question arises, where are they getting the money from? Right? Number one. Number two, the
Right.
question arises, if the government has been on a hiring spree for the last 8 years, and the government payrolls have been growing dramatically in relation to the private sector, how is this possible? It's a parasitic relationship. We look at government as something that looks to sustain itself. You have to understand, folks, when the government gets that big, we, the private sector, are in competition with it. It's naturally going to happen. This is something that people do not realize. We are in competition with it, whether it is for resources, whether it is for jobs, whether it's for our own existence. I want you to think about this for a second. I mean, how many times we hear the story of all of a sudden they discover some endangered species and some land that's owned by ranchers or whatnot, all of a sudden it's cracked down upon and taken in a federal land grab.
Right.
Now,
Right.
we're talking about a government that doesn't care that there's 50 million babies that have been aborted since Roe v. Wade. You're talking about a government that does not care, that is impartial, that is absolutely non capricious in its attitude for the sanctity of life, but all of a sudden they care about the dung beetle. All of a sudden they care about some rare tortoise. No, they're caring about the fact that they can grab this land and sell it on the back end to foreign investors and multinational corporations at your expense. This is what I said. The government is a problem if you allow it to get too big and begin to trample on the rights of the people, especially if the people become so apathetic that we no longer watch it. Liberty requires eternal vigilance. That's the important part of this whole entire thing. If we're not vigilant, then it's going to be problematic. If we're not vigilant, then we're going to have these absolute tyrants. You know, what does it says? A population of sheep will be governed by wolves. And that's exactly what happens. So,
Boom. Yep.
we understand the problem with government, CJ, and that's the whole entire thing, man. It's very key that people understand that. But the liberals, on the other hand, they think government's a solution. Government's wonderful. Government's here to help it because they're virtuous. They signal virtuosity to the government, and they think that it's angels. They think that it's angels who are out there. That's why the free market model is the best model in the world, because there are no angels. Because when government gets that big, you begin to statistically attract the most criminally minded individuals, CJ.
And that's exactly what's happened. It's exactly where we are. Yeah, another exciting news too, and I went over this very briefly earlier, that also today that Trump is expected to sign the temporary ban on refugees, which is a great thing. So today, Trump is expected to sign executive orders starting Wednesday that include a temporary ban on most refugees and a suspension on visas for citizens of Syria and 6 other Middle Eastern and African countries, says congressional aides. Trump, who tweeted that a big day was planned on national security on Wednesday, is expected to ban for several months the entry of refugees in the United States, except for religious minorities escaping persecution, until more aggressive vetting is in place.
Yep.
And he's expected to announce that today, which is the right thing to do.
Absolutely, man. 1,000%. It is the right thing to do. So I'm totally looking forward to that, man. Totally, 1,000%. Like, what's your take on that?
Well, just in terms of the amount of inflow, and last several months we've heard of where several of these undocumented people that have come over that they lose track of them, right? So they come over on these visas, they extend their stay, they end up falling off the grid, they end up going untracked, and we don't know where these people are. So yeah, yes, there needs to be a vetting process, and absolutely, if someone is escaping, persecution, they're a Christian, they want to come over, and they're willing to understand and adapt to America and our beliefs, but don't be coming over here trying to change our country and establishing, that we're, Sharia law and all these things. Is that, that's not what America is about. So again, I think is the right thing to do. In particular, just look at Germany, for example. Look at France, for example, of what's happening there. Do you want that coming to America?
Sure, if you're a leftist, you do, because like some of these women were holding signs saying, in the Angry Women March. Okay, they were holding signs saying "Refugees welcome." I mean, these are clearly women who you might not have kids, or you don't care about your child's future if you're screaming out there saying "Refugees welcome," and then they say the other one, "We are a country that's built on immigrants." Yeah, legal immigrants who risked life and limb and paid their way through, was stuck on Ellis Island until they could be cleared with a health clearance, and then brought into this country and worked their ass off to help build the greatest country on God's green earth. Legal immigrants who have skin in the game, not somebody who's coming here illegally, or nine times out of 10, whatever money's earned is sucked back out to their family members. Family members back in the countries in which they came. Look, I've talked to many legals throughout the course of my time, many legals. And I asked them, so where are you from? And they'll say, well, I'm from so and so. I'm from Guatemala. I'm from Honduras. I'm from this, that, and the other. Okay. How are you staying? Oh, me and my friends. There's like 15 guys. Oh, we all stay in this one house. Okay. How are you? And so, when was the last time you were in the country? Oh, I have not been back. I'm working here, and I'm sending all the money back. And one day, then I go back, and then I live like a king. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. And you hear stories all the time. These guys are sending money back. A lot of them are able to help their families get into a better station in life, and I'm all for that. Go for that. You want to help your family get to a better station in your life. Go for it. Go for it. But come here legally and do it. Come here legally. Pay your way through like most other immigrants. Then you'd have some serious skin in the game. And then you have learn the language. That's the most important thing. It's like, one of the things that you look at some of the most successful immigrant groups that are in this country who do extremely well economically speaking. One of the things they always teach and impugn on their kids is learn the language. If you're going to operate in this country, learn the language. And there's a massive emphasis put on education. So these are some of the things that need to be done, man. This whole Middle Eastern immigration, bro, 1,000%. It needs to be stopped until we can get a better system in place than the one that we have. Okay? That's
bingo. Yeah, we have enough to deal with the way that it is. Let's fix the current situation in the U.S. first before we just continue opening the floodgates for others to come over and complicating things.
Yep, absolutely, man. 1,000%. Which brings us to what's the next thing on the radar, my man? I mean, let's just roll with some more MAGA stuff, bro. Then we'll get into some of the China stuff and all that.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so you take a look at the markets and the direction that they're heading. So again, the S&P notched up to new records as Dow moves closer to 20,000. So that whole initial, okay, let's wait and see what happens. I think that people are starting to feel a little bit better regarding the direction of the country and what's triggering. So the S&P 500 NASDAQ composite closed at new records on Tuesday, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average resumed its march towards the psychologically important 20,000 points, finishing up less than 90 points away from the elusive milestones. Gains for stocks came after a solid round of corporate earnings boosted investor sentiment, provided a catalyst after mostly lackluster trading following President Donald Trump's inauguration on Friday. Upbeat earnings may help investors justify what has been an otherwise rapid ascent in equity value since the real estate mogul's November election win, underpinned by the belief that he would implement a slate of pro-business policies to help rev up the U.S. economic growth, which is exactly what we need. If we can create several hundreds, thousands of new small businesses, the amount of impact that can make on our economy is just going to be huge, V.
It's going to be massive, man. It's going to be massive. And you know, when you killed TPP and people with real sense, people who was campaigning on a platform of labor and jobs and protecting the economy, guys like Bernie Sanders, it is so violent. I mean, it's so vital. It's so vital that they recognize it, because now their constituents start realizing, wait a minute, the guy that I was, putting all my hopes on and all my dreams on is recognizing who this individual is, and that this guy he is who he says he is. That when he said he's going to kill TPP, he actually did it. He actually means what he says. He's a doer and not a talker. So that's the most amazing thing, and it's glad that people, recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And just in terms of the amount of, when you talk about regulations and how much that's impacted, U.S. business and the expense that it's created there. I mean, that's a huge opportunity in itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 1000%, man. And then on the other end of it, you look at what again, another legacy of Obama, his pivot towards his Asian pivot. How did the Asian pivot work out so well, CJ? I mean, who's another a loss on the road of this Asian pivot maneuver that he's done?
Yeah, just amazing. As much as he tried to court, Vietnam and trying to get them to pivot towards the U.S. and promising them certain things and never really delivering, and then boom, look what happens. Now we have a resurgence of China and Vietnam ties. So this is going to be interesting, in particular with with the whole South China Sea and what's happening there and the new Silk Road. So yeah, so a visit from Beijing by Vietnam's Communist Party chief underscored a major shift in Sino-Vietnamese bilateral relations.
Huge, huge shift. And again, for every power vacuum we leave behind, China comes in and fills it. Every power vacuum. This whole this whole Asian pivot has been disastrous. It has been absolutely disastrous. And to see Vietnam all of a sudden get swooped up by China, we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, they share so much in common, going back many decades, even back in hundreds of years. So for them to be involved in this, it just shows you where we are lacking. Why are we not approaching these things strategically? Why? Because we have the wrong mentality. We're looking to exploit. China's not looking for exploitation. They're looking for mutually beneficial trade. And that's the lesson I think we're going to start learning under the Trump administration is let's make deals. Let's make deals. And I think this whole thing happened, CJ, I think it was back in July, when the tipping point of the U.S., China, Vietnam triangle, when that whole thing where, John Kerry was, doing his best to woo the Vietnamese leader. And they did it in such a way that it's unbelievable, man.
Yeah, I mean, and John Kerry himself is just, to have him out there trying to negotiate things is just, unreal in itself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, again, and I think that's one of the things that you'll eventually will see is that the administration will do is that right now it would be you imagine if day one or day two that Trump comes out and says, yeah, I'm meeting with Putin and I'm meeting with China tomorrow. He'd be scolded, he'd be looked at and said, yeah, we told that he was a communist, look, and everything else. But this is definitely on his radar. I think it's just a matter of time before everything is negotiated regarding the future, and that's in regards to the new Silk Road, right?
Yep, exactly. Absolutely correct, my man. Absolutely correct. Hey CJ, I hate to do this, bro. I just have a family emergency come up right now.
Yeah, go for it, man. Go for it.
You run the rest of the show. I have to run.
Okay, everything's okay. Text me, let me know.
Thanks. Yep. Bye.
All right, very good. So, again, talking around the economy, there is a couple of sectors that are what I'm going to kind of refer to as the watch out sectors, and that's in regards to shopping malls. You know, you've seen how much that retail, online retail, has really put a huge dent in brick and mortar retails. So another report has came out in regards to mall owners' rush for the exits as the amount of defaults that are occurring. You know, if we look at the last few months, the amount of retail shops that have announced they're closing the doors. You know, we saw where Macy's announced that they're closing close to 100 stores. The limited plans to close all 250 of their stores and filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So this report just goes out to detail the shopping malls. So the example that they give is the last week we wrote about the epic collapse of the Galleria Mall in Pittsburgh, which sold for $100 million after once being appraised for $190 million, shortly after being opened in 2005. Unfortunately for mall owners, while the Pittsburgh Mills Galleria is an extreme example of crashing mall valuations, are hardly an anomaly these days. In fact, just a few weeks ago, Commercial Real Estate Direct wrote about the Foothill Malls in Tucson, Arizona, which was valued at $115 million in 2006, and backs a $75 million loan standing on it, recently appraised for just $18 million, which is going to lead to more than a 75% loss for lenders. So that's a huge watch out in terms of the economy. You know, we see everything moving more towards, digital and online. And, several years ago, online was used more for just, use of research and, hey, price comparison. Well, now we see that the entire digital area is moving more towards an actual hard base where people are purchasing a lot more online. So again, retail brick and mortar is going to have to do a lot to adjust, to modify, become a lot more, I don't want to use the word trendy, but I think that's appropriate in terms of customizing towards the consumer. I think we'll continue to see that with other large retailers, J.C. Penney. We know that Sears, think of it through the years with Sears and Kmart, how they've struggled with that for so many years. So will this be the last year for Sears? Again, and that's why this is so important in regards to, our infrastructure, so important for us to reinvest in our manufacturing sectors, is to get these jobs back up and pumping to see what's going to happen. Another thing that we had lined up today was to talk about the digital marketing area regarding marketing and funds that are spent on advertising. And I thought that this would be important to share with our listeners as far as what's happening with publishers. So this article goes out. It's out by Business Insider, and what it talks about in particular is it's a leaked report that shows how much money publishers make from platforms like Facebook, Google, and Snapchat. And as you know, consumers anymore, the mobile platform is just completely, really taking over the sector in terms of, how people, read, how people are surfing the internet. Mobile has just become so more dominant. And I think that that's what has led to the move towards some of more of those social platforms and the advertisement dollars that are there. So according to this report, Google and Snapchat, according premium publisher trade company Digital Context Next, DCN, claims that average premium publishers generated $7.7 million in revenue from distributing their content on third-party platforms in the first half of 2016. This is equivalent to around 14% of their overall revenues in the period. On average, premium publishing companies generated $773,000 in the first half of 2016 by distributing their content on YouTube. Content published to Facebook earned an average of $560,000. Twitter generated an average of $482,000, and Snapchat $192,000. So this is just very interesting to see the move towards social media in terms of how it is working. And yes, they don't make anything, they don't manufacture anything, but I tell you what, their marketing and the dollars and how they can, when you think of that many people that are on Twitter, that many people that are on Snapchat and Facebook, It's just a huge opportunity. Now, it also goes to show that YouTube also represents the largest individual source of revenue from premium publishers, according to this report. So of the data in the survey, 19 of its members, including the Financial Times, ESPN, Bloomberg, about the way they use to generate revenue from third-party distribution platforms, is conducted in-depth interviews with 8 of those members. The report did not offer financial details of each publisher, but instead provided the average amount a typical premium publisher receives. Business Insider, I'm not going to go on to read the whole thing, but you guys overall can get the idea. So, again, as much as you may not like social media and everything you do, companies have to embrace the new digital marketing era in order to succeed. And those companies that begin doing that and leveraging that are going to by far see a lot more success. And ironically enough, in my social media feeds, I don't see a whole lot of digital marketing from like JCPenney, from Sears, from they still use the traditional straight to either a website or or emails, which are still very valuable, but just a whole kind of shift in terms of the economy and how it works. Now, another thing I wanted to discuss on today's broadcast was what I'm calling kind of a test to watch in terms of Trump and how he's lining things up. So yesterday, we had Stephen Munchkin, I think is what B calls him, had to get up and go through the actual the confirmation hearing. So in this, as you know, right now, Rand Paul has a bill out there to audit the Fed, and it has huge momentum. So that he was directly asked regarding it. So Trump Treasury Chief carefully signals support for U.S. Fed's independence. So I'm kind of leaving this out there. To me, is that okay? Let's wait and see exactly so what he does. So U.S. Secretary nominee Steve Munchkin isn't jumping on the Republican bandwagon to audit the Fed. In recent question by senators following his confirmation hearings on Thursday, Munchkin was asked about his thoughts on politicizing decisions made by the Federal Reserve Board of Governors and the benefits of independent central banking. Mnuchin answers was crafted carefully. Of course it was. The Federal Reserve is organized, and this is quote unquote from him, the Federal Reserve is organized with sufficient independence to conduct monetary policy and open market operation. Mnuchin responded to Senator Bill Nelson, a Florida Democrat, I endorse the increased transparency we have seen from the Federal Reserve Board over recent years. The response appears to lean against legislation of Fed oversight reform and the Modernization Act of 2015, which was introduced in the House of Representatives but never became law. That would have subjected the central bankers' monetary policy became in recent congressional scrutiny. So, again, the thing that I know that this will, this article will probably go out and you'll have a lot of other new media come out and say, hey, yeah, we told you this and this is going to happen. And I'm not making excuses for Trump, but what I'm saying is there's a very fine balancing act that has to be played out here. If you think of the level of the amount of uncertainty, the amount of roadblocks that are going to happen right now that the Democrats and some Republicans are going to throw out in front of him. So I think you're going to see a lot of as they go up and they give testimony, they're probably pretty much going to say what they need to say to get placed in position. It's going to be their actions by far that are going to be the true tell of the test of what happens moving forward. And rest assured that that we're going to be here to hold up and hold these people accountable and to share honest reporting. We're not going to sugarcoat it as opposed to what was going to happen here. And again, if Congress and the Senate pass this bill and it goes to Trump's desk, that's going to be the moment of truth, right? It's not going to be regarding his appeal and Mnuchin and what he does and his role as the in the Treasury. So kind of a wait and see, but I wanted to discuss that article because I thought that was important. Also, just a heads up in terms of there's a lot of talk right now on the Hill regarding the Affordable Care Act and its repeal and replace. I'm seeing so many false reports out there that, oh, they're going to take, they're killing Medicaid, they're going to take away the pre-qualifying existing condition is being taken away. All these bogus reports that are coming out. So I'm going to just really encourage everyone to kind of, do your own homework, regarding that. I, by no means, I listened yesterday to the Health and Human Services new secretary and some of the testimony that he provided. By no means am I going to, state that I'm an expert in it. But what from I gathered from that is that, this plan that is still kind of forming up, day to day in terms of what reform or what plan is going to be in place to modify it. So, and I want to take a moment just to talk about, what is so broken with the Affordable Care Act, which by no means is not affordable. Let's break this down for a moment and talk about, what exactly has happened the last several years since Obamacare passed. Number one, let's talk about that the taxes, right? So at first there wasn't a tax, and then it's not a tax. The Supreme Court had to come in and say, well, no, it's not a tax, but it really is, but we're going to let it pass anyway. So how much does it make sense that if you and I are needing health care insurance for our families, right? And we go out there and we say, well, how much is it going to be to insure my family? Well, it's going to be $4,000 a year to insure your family of 4 or 5, whatever. Well, what's the tax penalty? Well, the tax penalty is $1,500. Well, honestly, it may be better for me just to pay the fine versus actually, obtaining real insurance. The second thing I'd like to discuss, regarding that is just the fact that the amount of impact this had on business, right? So I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe the mandate listed that any employer over 20 employees or employees working over 30 hours, that benefits must be provided. So in saying that, that amount of benefit, pretty much created the part-time economy that we're seeing. We saw where people were being, their jobs, full-time employees were being let go just for the sake of hiring 2 people at 20 hours, just to avoid having to, provide insurance. So again, that's just a huge hinder on small business and the amount of things that were placed there. Now, another factor that I would like to throw in the equation of this is that, yes, with the Affordable Care Act, were more people brought in, children, people with disabilities. Yes, a lot more people were brought into it, under the Medicaid, Medicare program. But what happened is that doctors started quitting. Doctors' offices stopped accepting, either due to reimbursement rates or the amount of challenges associated with getting paid for their services. So even though, maybe more people, may have been insured, the quality and lack of services shut down completely. So and again, the last several years, what have we seen? We've seen nothing but a consolidation in the healthcare industry. You have on the Hill yesterday, I believe that Aetna was trying to merge with another health insurance. By the time it's said and done, there's going to be 1 or 2 big players in the healthcare industry, and they're going to be able to dictate whatever they want in terms of pricing and plans. So again, there's no doubt in my mind, and why I'm spending so much time discussing it is the fact that the Affordable Care Act does need to be. There some good things with it. Yes, I think that not a lot. Pre-qualifying conditions or pre-existing conditions, pre-existing conditions. Yeah, any pre-existing condition. Yeah, definitely you should be able to get insured. Regardless, especially for those that lose their jobs and they move on to another one. But when you take a look at what the Affordable Care Act did not address, it did not address the amount of regulation that's right now on that industry. It doesn't make sense that you work in a particular state, but your company is based in Rhode Island, so your health plan has to be in Rhode Island base because of your employer. So if you deregulate that entire industry and you allow companies to compete across state lines to offer plans to negotiate those, how much more affordable could that be? You also saw mention that Trump had mentioned regarding the entire drug prices, and it's no doubt that when you look at it, the amount of disparity that's there between drug prices, you know, in Canada, drug prices in Europe versus what we pay here in the United States. And how does that affect us? Well, number one is that the insurance companies have to pay that. So if you can buy a drug in Canada that's a 30-day fill for, you know, $50 versus here in the United States is $500, what are you going to do, right? So there are so many things that have to be taken a look at with the entire Affordable Care Act. And, you know, rest assured from the discussion and what, you know, the testimony that was provided, that no one's out there to take your insurance plan away. No one is out there to, you know, to cut benefits. It's so true that, you know, basically, you know, over the next several years, if something is not done, that the entire health industry is going to collapse upon itself with the Affordable Care Act. It's just not solvent. There's no way that anyone could deny that. So again, I just want to throw that out there because I'm seeing just so much, you know, false information that is being spread out there currently. So coming up here to the last closing minutes, I want to thank all of you for listening in today. We do have today Hump Day with V and Dex, and that'll be on later on. If you haven't checked out, please make sure to do so. Yesterday with the trading day with the Vulcan and V, it was a great, I don't want to call it a debate, I just want to say it was a very robust dialogue in regards to it. I went through and read the comments last night, and just so many great comments regarding, hey, I learned a lot, I get it, I understand things a lot better. And that's one of the things that Rogue Money will always bring you. You know, we bring aboard people that have different opinions than us, and we encourage, you know, robust dialogue to you know, to have those conversations regarding what's working, what's not. Let's have dialogue. Let's open it up to do that. So check that out if you haven't listened to it yet. Go back to yesterday's show with the trading Terror Dome. It was a great show. Later on today, we got Hump Day coming up. So please, if you haven't done so yet, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out at roguemoney.net. Just a quick programming update. I just want to make the announcement real quickly that after kind of reviewing some things and checking out some of our view time and everything coming back, we have decided to move our live Friday night show to a Friday 4 p.m. broadcast. So we're going to move that time to 4 p.m. on Fridays, and the goal there is to hopefully, as you're driving home from work, whatever, that you can listen into V and CJ. We'll try to always have a guest on that. We do have a great interview lined up to release on Saturday. So check it out. So once again, thank you for being with us this morning. This is producer CJ. V's out right now, but he will definitely be back. And everyone have a great day. And as V always says, go out there and be epic. So this is CJ, and we are over and we are out. Take care, everyone.